Today we have a very serious subject to talk about. I'm so proud to be joined I am so proud to be joined by some 9/11 families. These are very brave and strong people who have made a fight for legislation to bring some modicum of fairness to what happened to their loved ones, that we are on the verge of getting real progress on and hopefully passing it in the next few months. And I want to salute them first and foremost. I'm joined by Terry Strada, who has been the leader of this group, and Caitlin and Justin Strada. They lost their husband and father, Tom Strada. Joined by Kathleen Owens, who lost her husband Peter, William Dietrich, who lost his wife Karen Mercer, who lost her husband Craig, Sheila Farsi, who lost her son Guy. So the families that are joining me here today are among a few of the many who lost loved ones on 9/11. We all remember what a horrible and dastardly act that was. Most of us in the New York area know people who were lost for no reason other than pure evil. But of course, unless you lost a member of your family, you don't suffer on the day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis that these families do. And we're here today because these families have made a quest. They've made a quest to bring some justice to those who aided and abetted the terrorists on 9/11. Terrorism didn't just happen on its own. Of course, it took a group of fanatical, evil people, but it also took money. And there were many countries and groups that funded Al-Qaeda. Today, similar countries and groups are funding ISIS, which could become as great a threat to us here in the homeland as Al-Qaeda was. And yet, when these families wanted to sue those groups for ripping their loved ones from them, the courts told them they had no basis in a very unfair ruling. So Senator Cornyn, a Republican, and myself introduced legislation called JASTA, J-A-S-T-A. And that legislation said that they could sue the groups that funded Al-Qaeda to do their dastardly acts in 2001. That included countries like Saudi Arabia as well as other groups, and that if there are future acts of terrorism here on American soil, those who, God forbid, would lose loved ones could also sue. So if ISIS were to try and do anything, that would happen. This will not only bring justice to these families, a very small amount, no recompense can repay the holes in their hearts that they live with every single day. But it will also serve as a warning for others who might want to try to fund terrorist groups that they can't get away scot-free, as up to now, groups that have funded Al-Qaeda have. Terrorists are evil and need an unfathomable amount of hate to carry out what they did. But they also need resources, and our legislation will cut off resources for countries and groups to be able to aid the evil of terrorism and walk away scot-free, while families suffer silently every day with the loss of loved ones. It's wrong, unfair, painful. Our legislation undoes that injustice. Since September 11th, families like those standing here today, which originally thought they could do this on their own without any change in the law, have run into serious legal hurdles in their efforts to sue supporters of terrorist attacks. You see, a number of federal courts have decided that the federal law does not allow those that aid terrorists to be civilly liable. That's a complicated way of saying that thousands of family members and those actually injured in the attacks cannot achieve justice by suing these outside groups for damage. That adds insult to the unimaginable injury these families have suffered. That is never what Congress intended in the legislation that was passed after 9/11. So, I introduced, along with Senator Cornyn, bipartisan legislation, a bill that's known as JASTA. It stands for the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, which would finally allow family members and victims of terrorist attacks, like the one standing before you today, to sue any country or group that helps finance a terrorist group involved in an attack on an American and seeks damage. Seems pretty logical, but the path to getting this done, unfortunately, has not been easy. Certain companies were concerned that they could be sued for acts that were done 100 years ago or 30 years ago, and they were trying to block the bill. We solved the problem so we can get this bill passed quickly by saying this will apply to 9/11 and all acts of terrorism that occurred after that. And we now have broad support for this legislation. I want to thank the chairman of our Judiciary Committee, Senator Lake. I called him 2 weeks ago and said, we've reached a compromise. We have large support. Why don't we put this on the Judiciary Committee agenda on 9/11, 2014? He immediately and gracefully agreed. So we will be voting this bill out of committee. Both Senator Cornyn and I are members of that committee on that day. We will then bring it to the Senate floor, where we hope not a single senator will object, and we can pass it quickly by what's called unanimous consent. And we believe once the Senate passes the bill, the House will. Our goal is to get this done before December 31st, 2014. And I think we have a darn good shot to make that happen. Never know what happens in Washington, but so far, things look very, very good. Let's see if I'm leaving anything out. Just for those of you legalese, here's what it does. It amends the Foreign Service Immunities Act so that foreign sponsors of terrorism cannot invoke sovereign immunity in cases arising from a terrorist attack that kills an American. And second, it amends the Anti-Terrorism Act so that civil suits against foreign sponsors of terrorism can be held accountable in U.S. courts where their conduct contributes to an attack that kills an American. And it will bring the justice that these brave, courageous, and fine people have sought over the many years. With that, I'm going to call on Terry Strada, who has been a leader amongst many of the families, the hundreds of families that support this legislation. Terry.
Hello. My name is Terry Strada. Thank you for coming today. I am the national co-chair of the 9/11 Families United for Justice Against Terrorism. I speak on behalf of over 6,000 victims, families, and survivors, and I graciously thank Senator Schumer for his hard work and continued support of the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, called JASTA. For 13 years, we have fought for the truth, accountability, and justice for the murder of our loved ones and the pain and suffering inflicted on us when 19 hijackers boarded 4 commercial airplanes and used them as missiles to attack us here on American soil. My husband, Tom Strada, was only 41 years old when he was brutally murdered along with 3,000 other innocent men, women, and children. He is loved and missed dearly by his family each and every day. Along with the hijackers themselves, the other culprits behind the worst terrorist attacks on our nation are the people who bankroll the terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and countless others. Al-Qaeda did not act alone. 9/11 took a lot of money, millions in fact, and hundreds of millions continue to support terrorist organizations across the globe. As long as there are well-funded radical Islamists who continue to vow to kill Americans, we are not safe. These terrorist organizations operate in the cloak of darkness and depend on massive sums of money to carry out their daily operations and heinous acts of brutality and murder. We need JASTA in order to restore what Congress always intended. Now, I may be repeating myself here, but like Senator Schumer said, Americans have the right to hold accountable in our courts those who wish to do us harm, give financial aid, logistical support, and murder us on American soil, no matter where they come from or who they may be. The threat of future attacks is very real and becoming more serious each and every day. As long as the financiers continue to supply funding to terrorist organizations with impunity, they will continue to repeat themselves over and over again. We must take every action possible to ensure our safety. Stopping the flow of money is a strong deterrent and one we should not hesitate to use. In the United States today, it is still a crime to finance the murder or deliberate physical harm to anyone. People aiding and abetting in the planning and implementation of such crimes are considered complicit and, according to our own laws, must be held accountable. JASTA makes this clear. It doesn't matter where the underlying wrongful act or omission occurs or is committed. If you support terrorism directed at the United States, you can be brought to account for it in our U.S. courts. JASTA also makes it clear that those responsible for terror attacks on American soil, whether they pulled the trigger themselves or paid the triggermen to do it, you can be held accountable and brought to justice. 13 years ago, I never could have imagined that my family would be torn apart by terrorism. I want to remind the American people, another attack like 9/11, or possibly of a greater magnitude, can happen again. If we don't stop the flow of money going to the terrorists, I'm afraid it will happen again. We stand here today, all of us, forever connected by our grief and united in our quest for justice. We are committed to succeeding in creating a safer country. JASTA is needed to help deter future terrorist attacks. JASTA is for all Americans. Thank you very much. Terry, E-R-Y, Strada, S-T-R-A-D-A. The 9/11 Families United for Justice Against Terrorism.
They've been the leader. Anyone else want to say anything? Okay. I just want to thank Terry and all of those with her. As I told them privately, you know, when something so terrible, so evil, so not understandable happens to you, the natural human reaction is to what the scriptures say, curse the darkness. Be angry, withdraw in on yourself. Just feel what had happened to you in such an unfair way. What the scriptures tell us is that when you light a candle, and you try to bring some justice and some change, it's very hard to do, it takes enormous strength and fortitude, but it's a saintly thing to do. And every one of the people here, many different ages, have that ability to light a candle. And I think I speak on behalf of all Americans.